This is Mac OS Ken.
A stellar June quarter and concerns over quarters to come. It is Friday, the 31st of July, 2026. When did that happen? I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from Mac OS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and sponsored by Coveron. Safeguard your identity and save up to 76% off with code MacOS at coveron.com/macOS. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSCan. Apple reported another record-breaking quarter on Thursday. Even after stellar earnings like the June quarter earnings Apple posted, the question is always, what will you have done for me lately 3 months from now? When listening for answers, we're not sure is not what investors want to hear. Not that Apple said the words "we're not sure," but that sure seems to be what some Wall Street people heard. Let's start with last quarter. Apple issued a press release that had the company posting June Q revenue of $109.4 billion. That was up 16% from the $94 billion posted for the June quarter of 25. It also beat the street's expectation of $108.8 billion. All that was on earnings per share of $2.02, up 29% from the $1.57 for the same quarter a year ago. That also beat the street's expectation of $1.89. Company gross margin came in at 50.1%. While that would seem to beat Apple's guidance of between 47.5% and 48.5%, it only kinda did that. Gross margin and earnings per share included favorable impact from tariff refunds, roughly 2 percentage points on the gross margin and 11 cents on earnings per share. Take those away, though, and Apple was still breaking records. In the press release, Apple's exiting CEO Tim Cook said the company was proud to report its strongest June quarter ever, with double-digit revenue growth across iPhone, Mac, and services, and in every geographic segment. Shall we go through them? It seems like the kind of thing we might do. On iPhone, Apple reported revenue of $54.3 billion. That was up 22% versus the $44.6 billion for the year-ago quarter. It also beat street expectations posted by Yahoo Finance of $53.5 billion. On the earnings call, CEO Cook said the communicator saw June quarter records in every geographic segment and set a June quarter record for upgraders. Apple CFO Kevin Perek had iPhone growing double digits in the vast majority of markets tracked by the company, hitting June quarter revenue records in both developed markets and emerging markets. The iPhone active installed base grew to an all-time high according to the CFO and set a June quarter record for upgraders. Numbers from World Panels showed the iPhone to be a top-selling model in the US, urban China, the UK, France, Australia, and Japan, and customer satisfaction is almost as high as it can be. 451 Research puts the most recent score at 99% in the US. The Mac had its best June quarter yet, according to CEO Cook. Revenue came in at $10.4 billion, up 29% from the $8 billion reported for the same quarter a year ago. This despite significant supply constraints. High-end and low-end sales led to the highs. Growth was said by the CEO to be driven by MacBook Pro and MacBook Neo. Cook had the Mac setting a June quarter revenue record in developed markets and an all-time record in emerging markets. CFO Perek noted strong double-digit growth in markets like Latin America, India, and Southeast Asia, while Cook called out particular strength in Greater China, where the Mac set an all-time revenue record. And folks dig 'em. Parek says customer satisfaction for the Mac was recently measured at 95%. iPad saw no growth, but no growth was expected. iPad revenue was $6.2 billion, according to Parek, down 6% from the roughly $6.6 billion reported for the year-ago quarter. The slowdown was said to be driven by the continued difficult compare against the launch of the A16-powered iPad back in 2025. Not that there weren't noobs. More than half the people buying an iPad last quarter were coming new to the tablet, and they way approve. Customer satisfaction in the States for iPad stands at 98%, according to Q3FY26. Wearables, home, and accessories were driven higher by the wearables. WHA saw a revenue of $7.9 billion. That was up 6% from the $7.4 billion reported a year ago. The segment grew in every geographic segment the company tracks and achieved a June quarter record for upgraders for Apple Watch, according to Cook. Just like the iPad, over half the people picking up an Apple Watch last quarter were picking up their first one and seeing a time to be happy. Customer satisfaction with Apple Watch stands at 95%. Put them all together and what have you got? Products revenue of $78.7 billion, up 18% year over year, according to CFO Parek. For the June quarter of 2025, products revenue came in at $66.6 billion. As for services, this is where things start to look shaky. I say start to look shaky because other stuff looks shaky ahead, but we're talking about what was, not what shall be. It really wasn't bad. In fact, services revenue of $30.7 billion set a June quarter record, up 12% versus the year-ago quarter, when Apple posted services revenue of $27.4 billion. But they missed Apple's guidance from the last call of around 16% growth. They also missed the street's expectation of $31.3 billion. Here's how not bad services were, according to CFO Parek. Apple saw double-digit growth in the vast majority of markets it tracks. The company set records in every category, with June records in advertising, App Store, Apple Care, music, and video. And they set all-time records in cloud services and payment services. But they guided for growth of 16% and, thanks to foreign exchange headwinds, only hit 12%. This time, they're guiding for 12%. But probably not really. We'll get to that. Entering the guidance part of his remarks, Apple's CFO said September quarter revenue is expected to be impacted by two main factors. First, Parek says the company expects foreign exchange to be a sequential headwind of about 2.5 percentage points to the year-over-year total company growth rate from the June quarter to the September quarter. That'll bring us back to the 12% growth Apple kind of says it's expecting for services. What Parek actually said was that they expect September quarter year-over-year reported growth to be largely similar to what they reported in the June quarter, after removing the negative sequential impact of about 2.5 percentage points from foreign exchange that they described. To me, it sounds like he's saying it would be 12% without the aforementioned headwinds. With those, sounds to me like it's going to be about 9.5%. The thing is, there are different ways to hear it. A couple of friends thought he was saying growth of about 14% that'll be knocked down by 4x to around 12%. While it can be heard either way, there's an exchange in the Q&A that seems to back up my 9.5% take. Don't let me forget to tell you about it. The other factor impacting September quarter revenue, they expect supply constraints to increase significantly sequentially. That'll affect iPhone, iPad, and the Mac, according to Parek. As a result, he and his expect September quarter total company revenue to grow between 9% and 11% year over year. iPhone will be affected by both foreign exchange headwinds and supply constraints. That'll put growth for iPhone down to mid-teens versus the year-ago quarter. Company gross margin is guided for between 47 and 48%. That includes a tariff recovery benefit of about 1 percentage point. We'll get to the Q&A part of the call in a moment, but first a word from today's sponsor, CoverOn, a single service to protect your identity and finances. There are all kinds of things you can and should do to protect yourself against online threats. Antivirus software, password managers, alerts from your bank and credit cards. Great ways to keep watch. CoverOn keeps watch for things that aren't as easy to see. Scanning the dark web for your personal information, keeping an eye out for your logins showing up online, tracking changes to your credit or new accounts turning up in your name. With CoverOn, you're keeping watch, they're keeping watch, but they're going one step further. No matter how vigilant we are, sometimes bad guys succeed. That's where cyber insurance comes in. Keeping watch is important, but when a scam or breach actually happens, that insurance provides real financial recovery and support to help make things right. With CoverOn, you're covered. Find out more and use code MacOS for up to 76% off at coveron.com/MacOS. Don't wait for something bad to happen. One scam can cost you everything. Use code MacOS for up to 76% off at coveron.com/MacOS. COVERON. CoverOn, a single service to protect your identity and finances. Use code MacOS for up to 76% off at coveron.com/MacOS. There wasn't nearly as much touchy-feely on the call for Apple's departing CEO as I expected. Every analyst to offer a question offered congratulations and or well wishes, with Cook thanking each kindly. Meanwhile, questions about the future were put to Parekh and Cook as if nothing is changing. Maybe that's a testament to how smoothly the transition to incoming CEO John Ternus is going. It is going seamlessly, according to Cook. While Ternus was on the call, he barely said anything. Cook did answer one question about Ternus that I had yesterday. The new CEO will lead the earnings calls going forward, according to the departing CEO. So yeah, maybe the feeling of normalcy is a testament to the seamless transition, or maybe it's because there's a lot of going on right now. As they would have on a normal call, by which I mean a call without a retiring CEO. As they would have on a normal call, concerns around the memory crisis dominated. If I'm honest, I think I liked it better when we were guessing than I did once CEO Cook spelled out the situation. Because spelled out, it is tough to understand and pronounce. Evercore analyst Ahmed Darianani was first out of the gate. He wondered how much of Apple's guidance for revenue growth of 9% to 12% was due to supply constraints versus other factors like foreign exchange. CEO Cook says supply constraints for Mac and, to a lesser extent, iPhone and iPad were driven by high demand, yay, and less flexibility in the supply chain than normal. Boo. If you look forward then into the current quarter, said the CEO, we continue to expect high levels of demand. However, with less flexibility in the supply chain, we expect the impact from the supply constraints to increase significantly, sequentially. So it sounds like there won't be enough Macs and iPhones to go around. It also sounds like they could cost more. Like, more. Not that Cook said that. Darianani asked specifically about memory and Apple raising prices because of it, with reports out there that Apple is seeking greater sourcing flexibility for memory. Would new sources be about trying to meet demand, or would it be about keeping prices stable? Doesn't sound like it's about the price. Pointing out that primarily the DRAM market has 3 suppliers. Cook says additional sources would help Apple on the supply side and perhaps the pricing side. On prices, it's unclear according to Cook, but it could help on the supply side. Going further on that, in an exchange with Melius research analyst Ben Reitzes, Cook said the primary issue is advanced nodes that Apple runs SoCs on. That's the primary supply constraint right now, and the root cause of it is not a regular supply issue. It's a demand forecast issue, to be candid, where the iPhone and Mac were both doing remarkably better than we thought they would, and we had high expectations. These are extraordinary numbers, and the supply chain just has less flexibility in it than normal. While Apple has bought ahead on components, demand has outpaced their ability to keep doing that. They expect demand to stay great, which will chew through Apple's carry-in inventory. Cook says Apple expects to see decreasing benefit from carry-in inventory over time beyond the September quarter, and stuff's not getting cheaper. On the last call, Cook reminded Darianani, Apple said it paid more for memory in the March quarter than it did in the December quarter. Yesterday, he said they paid more in the June quarter than they did in the March quarter. For September, they expect to pay even higher memory costs, according to Cook. Carry-in could defray that somewhat this quarter, as could lower costs for other components. That said, if you look beyond September, Cook says the company sees the market pricing for memory continuing to increase, which could drive an increasing impact on Apple's business, something they are continuing to evaluate. Shifting back to services, it was an exchange with Morgan Stanley analyst Eric Woodring that has me thinking Apple's guiding for services growth of about 9.5%, without wanting to say that outright. Woodring pointed out that 12% service growth for the June quarter was below Apple's original guidance. I think he said the fiscal fourth quarter guidance assumes another deceleration. I think the math would imply below 10% year over year as reported. He then wanted to know why, yielding a bunch of interesting stuff from CFO Parekh. For example, part of the services slowdown last quarter had to do with a tough compare at the cinema. Never really occurred to me to wonder where money from a theatrical release would show up in Apple's books. Turns out, it's in services. Last year, Apple had the hugely successful movie F1, The Movie, in theaters. This year it had no big screen summer release, so no money coming from movies. Also, there's been a slowdown in mobile gaming and changes in App Store business in certain countries, indicating that link-out rules in the EU and third-party app stores and stuff like that are starting to have an effect. All of that aside, Parekh didn't correct Woodring's read that Apple was guiding for services growth under 10%. Goldman Sachs analyst Michael Ng had a question about compute cost around Siri AI. After saying how excited he was about the whole thing, how much developers love it, and how pleased public testers have been, Cook indicated they're not 100% clear on dealing with compute cost yet. Quoting the CEO, "We do believe there will be people that will want to use it a lot, and so we will have some kind of upgrade policies on iCloud Plus, where people can buy up the stack on iCloud Plus, and we'll see how the pickup for that is." Kind of sounds like a plan, doesn't it? I said that incoming CEO John Turnus was on the call, though he barely said anything. The only thing that got him to talk was B of A analyst Wamsi Mohan addressing him directly. With talk of various AI companies getting into the consumer electronics space, does Turnus have a high-level take on whether the competitive landscape is changing? His response, "I guess I would just reiterate what Tim said. There is so much opportunity for us with everything that's happening in this space, and we're just really focused on our plans and very excited about it. Spoken like someone who came up under Tim Cook. Well, we've covered a lot of the call. More was said than I have said. You can hear a replay of the call on Apple's site. That'll be up for the next couple of weeks. You can also download a podcast of the call, and a special thank you to 6 Colors for their transcript of the call. 6colors.com if you want to parse and pore over every word. I'll tell you who didn't like either what they heard or what they read into the call. A sizable chunk of Apple investors. Apple shares were down a little over 21 points, or 6.33% after the call and after-hours trading on Thursday. I've seen headlines noting the services slowed down. Some express worry about supply not meeting demand. Some say memory concerns overshadowed the decidedly good news the company shared. We'll get deeper into reactions on Monday. macOS Ken, brought to you by me and sponsored by Coveron. Safeguard your identity and save up to 76% off with code macOS at coveron.com/macOS. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSken. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media, online at backbeatmedia.com. You can find me on Mastodon, macOSken at mastodon.social. You can also send me an email, info@macosken.com. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.